Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. This is Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. Apple picking season probably generates fun memories for many people. It definitely does for me. Apple picking definitely embodies agritourism. And Scott Farm in Dummerston, Vermont is an eco-certified heirloom apple oasis. The farm is rich in history. It was settled in 1791, and the orchards were planted in 1911, and they now bear over 130 varieties of apples, many of which are heirloom. Scott Farm is a for-profit working farm, which is owned by the Landmark Trust USA, a nonprofit historic preservation organization which was gifted the 571-acre property in 1995. Today, Scott Farm is led by General Manager Simon Renault and Orchardist Erin Robinson. The orchard is a living, breathing ecosystem that is managed with biological and cultural methods which produce healthy, high-quality fruits. The community can visit the farm, enjoy their beautiful grounds, pick apples, shop at the farmers market, eat at their outdoor cafe, drink ciders produced at their cider mill, tour the property, enjoy community events, and celebrate their own events. Although I definitely understand the hard work involved in farming, I never really understood much about apples, even after all the years of visiting orchards and apple picking. I feel like there was a missed opportunity to educate me about apples during all of those apple picking adventures. This presents a significant opportunity for apple orchards to embrace agritourism in an even more immersive way. My inspiring conversation with Simon and Erin gave me a whole new appreciation for the intricacies involved in apple growing and a renewed interest in learning more about apples. The next time you go apple picking, talk to the farmers and orchardists, or take a tour if available, and learn more about what it takes to grow these gorgeous, healthy fruits. Erin Robinson, Simon Renault from Scott Farm Orchard. Welcome to the Agritourist podcast, and I'm glad we were able to schedule this. So thank you for taking the time. So why don't you each tell me about yourselves individually? I just want to know some of your backstories, get to know you, and how you came here. So whoever wants to start.
I am a Dummerston native. I grew up right up the road. So this is kind of my neck of the woods in the literal and metaphorical sense. I've been a part of Scott Farm for much over a decade, and the last 10 years strictly the orchard side. So I've worn many hats here, and I am in the last 5 years, I've been managing the orchard side of things. So I, in the last 10 years, have pretty much done everything that you can do, from painting to housekeeping to market cider making, and just evolved into this position where the orchard and the trees are under my care now.
So what do you love about it?
Oh, I love everything about it. It's challenging. It's incredibly rewarding. I get to grow this really healthy, wonderful food for people I love and the community I love and the community I grew up in. Challenged every year with with Mother Nature, of course, and how unique apples are and how challenging they are to grow, and individually by variety, how challenging they can be to grow. I got a wonderful group of Jamaicans who I get to spend half the year with, who make our job possible. And it's obviously visually very rewarding and stunning. Even in the winter, it can be really beautiful. So it's just never a dull moment, and always keeps me forward thinking and on my toes and problem solving. And it's rewarding in every sense of the word.
Excellent. Simon, tell me about your background. How did you get here?
Yeah, so I grew up in France, and after college, after graduating from college, I pretty much wanted to drop everything and do something very different. And I actually moved to Ireland I worked on a farm for the better part of 3 years that I spent in Ireland. I just basically caught the travel bug and the farming bug at the same time in my early 20s. And I did not go to college for it. It was really just kind of out of rebellion and wanting to step out of Western civilization that I did that. And that led me to discover permaculture, and which brought me to the US 17 years ago, to the West Coast, to Oregon. I met my wife there, who is from the East Coast originally. When we wanted to have a family, we decided to move to the Northeast and ended up in Vermont. And for 10 years, I ran a small vegetable farm. And then after 10 years...
Was that your own farm?
Yeah, well, it wasn't my own farm. I was on somebody else's land. I was kind of caretaking while leasing land. So it was while leasing land to basically, do my own thing. It was very small operation called vegetable CSA. And but around the vegetable CSA, I created an internship. I was quite involved in the community, and helped start a farmers market, a community garden in our small village. And after 10 years of doing that, I kind of wanted to, to be honest, it was a balance of wanting to make a better living, frankly, than the meager income I was making working hard growing vegetables myself. And at the same time, also wanted to grow professionally. So I went back to grad school, and in a management of mission-driven organization, which used to be called management of nonprofits. But so I got a degree in that. And just as I graduated, Scott Farm was looking for a general manager. And that was 4 years ago when I started here. And so my role here is more administrative and management of all operations. And I think we'll talk about that. Scott Farm has, it's primarily an orchard. Our business is to grow and sell fruit, but there are also many other aspects of the business.
Well, you mentioned something which is important, and it's something I keep addressing, is people making money in farming and how to make money in farming and being effective in that. And so obviously that was a challenge for you when you had, I guess it was a CSA. You were doing a CSA at that farm?
Yeah, I had a vegetable, and I grew and I raised sheep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that was just a part of my income, and another half of my income was basically caretaking on the land that I was in.
Yeah. It's challenging though, growing vegetables and selling them. And, so I've been talking to a lot of different farmers about different ways of changing those income streams and stuff like that. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it is something that, needs to be addressed and we need to look at. So let's talk about the farm, Scott Farm Orchard. It has obviously an amazing history. We don't have to go into all those details, but I don't know if either of you want to highlight some of that history and kind of, how this has been created? Because there's obviously a lot of years here of this farm and the orchards being created.
So there's a long history, and Scott Farm is on the National Register of Historic Places. Dates back to 1791. And so since 1791, there's been many families that have owned and operating Scott Farm. And there's been the farm itself, agriculturally, has had many, many facets, many different types of operations. From, being a subsistence farm for the better part of the 1800s, having an agritourism component, interestingly, even way back in the 1800s, welcoming tourists and offering guest house and making breakfasts and things like that. And then in the 1900s, when the Holbrooks owned the farm, they're the ones who started the orchard operation. And in the early 1900s, they planted upward of, I think, 80 acres of mostly Macintosh apples, which was quite unique at the time, or pioneering, let's say. And then in 1995, the Holbrook family, Fred Holbrook, donated the farm to the Landmark Trust USA, a nonprofit organization, historic preservation nonprofit, to basically care for the farm, all the buildings. We have many barns, and also take care of the orchard. And the orchard the way it was, and also, then subsequently the orchard was converted into a collection of heirlooms, but maybe we'll get into that.
I think it's important to mention about that specifically, and also Fred, and that the previous people in this farm, the reason we're here today is because of the transition that these people made to continue the farm. Zeke, the previous orchardist, when he came here, he knew the conventional orchard would not last in our market with the competition in the West and Washington. And with his love for heirlooms, he knew that we needed to carve out a different niche, and that we couldn't stand up to, with just Macintosh, to these big growers. And he did that. I mean, it was a really remarkable forward thinking, and it took a lot of work to get the public, who are used to big shiny red apples, to start understanding how fabulous these other varieties are. But I think it's important to note that transitioning with change is really what has kept Scott Farm around. And Fred too. I mean, being the Fred Senior and Junior and however many there were, that they started shipping apples back in the day, and that put us on the map in its own way. So just that forward thinking is really important to the farm's success and why we're still able to be here today.
Excellent. And you're eco certified. What does that mean? I know that there's a farm in New York, I think Fishkill Farms. I believe they are eco certified as well. And I don't really understand what that term is. I mean, we hear organic, and I don't think that's used when it comes to apples. So can you explain that to me?
Eco certified, yeah. There's a very long-winded answer, and there's the short one. The short one, I'm going to give it a try. 93% of organic apples in the U.S. come from Washington State. And most of those apples are grown east of the Cascades in a very dry environment. So very, very different from the Northeast climate. And the way the organic certification standards and protocols have been created, it's I'm going to say near impossible to be organically certified for orchards in the Northeast. And those who actually try use primarily copper and sulfur. I mean, this is Erin's expertise, so I hesitate talking too much about it. But on a sort of big picture level, here in Vermont, we have, the UVM extension. And when I first started here, coming from the vegetable world, I had this image that, no, Scott Farm should be organic. And very quickly from, UVM and their trials and I was told, don't even go there. You're going to spend your time spraying copper, sulfur. The eco program is much more adapted to this climate. And so this program of eco has been created over 20 years ago, and Scott Farm and Sigurd Ben at the time, the Orchardist, were, pioneering there in creating standards and protocols, spray protocols, and a list of products that can be used here to tackle, there's over 60 pests, apple pests that we have here that they don't have in Washington. We have hot, humid summers, which are conducive to fungal, bacterial diseases that, are not necessarily present in the dry environment of the Northwest. So the eco protocol was created by scientists, researchers, orchard managers,
IPM Institute,
the IPM Institute in Wisconsin, to basically adapt a sort of more environmentally friendly protocol for orchards in the Northeast.
More realistic to what we feel. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And there's a eco certified. There is a ton of protocol, and being a responsible grower, period, is a big part of this. And when and what you spray, and pollinator health and soil health, all are things that we're very passionate about and are all part. Sometimes people think if it's not organic, we're out killing bees and don't care about the soil, and that is absolutely not true. There's a ton of responsibility and thoughtfulness and pollinator encouragement, and it's not a big scary thing if it's not organic.
And I think what you're saying, Erin, is one of the beauties of the eco, the eco program is that it looks at the orchard holistically, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just about spraying, not spraying, or when you spray, what you spray. It's very much about, looking at pollinator habitats, looking at prevention of diseases, looking at soil, exactly.
Yeah. And I think there's a big misunderstanding too, just simply that organic does spray too. A lot of people think that organic means no spraying at all, and that's absolutely not the case.
I think the irony of it, sorry if I'm interrupting you, Erin, but the irony of it in the Northeast is that organic sprayers end up spraying more than we do. So there's a lot of, as you say, you just shared that you didn't know any of it. I think a lot of it is not known by the public, unfortunately, and we try to, promote that. And the organization Red Tomato, who is in charge of, let's say, the integrity of the eco program, does a great job. They're based in Providence, Rhode Island, not too far from you. They do a great job doing that promotion, but it's hard to really get the word out because in the consumer mindset, there is organic and conventional and nothing else. It's very sort of dualistic understanding of agriculture. And here in the orchard world, it's much more nuanced.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting. I mean, and I'm in this world, and I wasn't clear on that. So thank you for explaining that. I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge is educating people and making them understand. I think we're finally at a state where they kind of understand organic, not fully, but at least we have that differentiation now. We never did. But this is really interesting. I didn't realize that this was a completely different differentiation. And I didn't realize the challenges Northeast versus the West, like around apple growing. So very interesting. So has that presented any issues to you from, like, I guess when customers come, do you have that conversation with them a lot? Are a lot of people surprised about that? Do they know what it means, or most people don't know what it means when they come? Your customer base, I guess, and the people visiting from an agritourism perspective.
There's a pretty solid customer base of people who've been coming for a long time, and and maybe don't understand, know we grow fruit well, but don't know like the nuance to what. But there are always people every year who ask about growing practices, ask about organic, ask about what we spray, and things like that. So I think that's just inevitable, which is fine. I'm happy to. And
Yeah.
The eco people are really good at teaching how to talk about it because it's a tricky subject. Even me, who understands what I do and am confident in what I do and am proud to, ecologically preserve this land, it's still a tricky subject. It still makes me fumble up sometimes because I want to portray properly, but I think we'll always have that conversation. But it's absolutely education. People need to be educated. But Eco's really good at putting out pamphlets and like ways to explain to our customer what we do, and so they can feel comfortable and confident in what we're doing. But
Simon, you had said Red Tomato was the name. What are they? The certifying organization, or are they a marketing organization? What are they?
Tomato works closely with the IPM Institute, IPM Institute of America, based in Wisconsin and Madison, and they're the certifying. They're the certifying organization. Red Tomato, how should I say it? Promotes, preserves the integrity of the program, manages the whole eco-certified program.
Okay. I'll definitely look them up. And are there other is there other produce out there that is under eco certified, or is it an apple specific thing, or is this
program? A peach
what was that?
program.
Oh, peach. Okay.
Yeah. And
okay.
I think that's it. They're working on pecans. I think the latest, what Red Tomato is really working on is expanding the program beyond the Northeast, so to the Midwest currently.
Interesting. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the farm and everything it has to offer. Like, talk to me about your revenue streams. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of dimension to the farm. There's the agritourism dimension, and then obviously you're selling your apples. So talk to me about the different revenue streams at the farm.
So I'm going to break it down sort of very roughly, but 60%, about 60% of our income comes from wholesale, meaning we pick the fruit, grade it, package it, and sell it out of our loading dock. And it goes to primarily food co-ops throughout the Northeast, all the way down to New York City, Massachusetts, some Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, of course, up to Burlington. And some of those we sell directly to, and many we sell indirectly via food distributors. So that's about 60% of our income. About 25%, 20% is retail out of our farm stand. And that's primarily apples, but it's also the byproducts or value-added products like cider, baked goods, and for the last 3 years, it's also hard cider. I'm going to say I'm not going to say I'm going to say Erin makes a really good sweet cider. Pressing sweet cider with the number of apple varieties we have, the revolving selection of varieties, makes a very, very good sweet cider that we don't pasteurize. That is freshly pressed, 2 to 3 times a week during harvest, and that we sell fresh out of our farm stand.
And ginger cider.
And ginger
we
cider.
Ginger.
We have a certified organic ginger grown in greenhouse. So the juiced, pressed ginger, mixed with some apple cider.
That sounds really good.
People travel really far to come to Scott Farm during the fall and get our ginger cider. Very, very good.
Okay, I'll remember that. That sounds delicious.
Um, and then going back to the income stream, then we have Scott Farm is fairly large. It's over 500 acres, and we have several houses actually on the property. So we actually, some of those houses, well, all of those houses are rented, most of them to year-round leases. People who, for some of them, have lived here for many years.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's about a little under 10% of our income. Some of that housing is used for the Jamaicans during harvest when they come here, the pickers, packers. And then we have event income. And the event, which, you mentioned agritourism, and that's the focus of this podcast, weddings. We have an event venue that we rent out for functions, businesses, birthday parties, bat mitzvahs, you name it. And that's the other 10% of the income.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about the agritourism components and I guess, the value it brings to the farm. Obviously, to me, the biggest value is the education and what people, walk away with. But talk to me about your perspective on that and what it's brought to the farm. Like you said, it started in the 1800s on this farm in particular. I guess they were bringing people onto the farm. So talk to me about the agritourism component.
Well, people want to pick their own. I mean, that's a huge draw is pick your own. We've expanded, doubled our pick your own orchards in the last 2 years because pick your own is such a draw. People want that experience. They want to come pick their own apples. We as you may know, we grow over 130 varieties of which are not pick your own. It's in the main orchard block. And the pick your owns have primarily been more commonly known Macintosh and Portland and Honeycrisp. And in the last years, we've added heirlooms so that people can draw from our specialty heirloom apples and pick their own heirloom apples. So I think keep creating the human experience. It also is great from a business aspect because we're not paying for our workers to pick and pack them. So it's a profit, it's an experience, and the costs are much lower. So I think
I
your own.
Presume you have a specific area for that. That
Yep.
is.
Yep.
How is that? How is that treated? I mean, how do you feel that the public?
People are pretty rough on the pick your own. It's kind of hard sometimes. I think again back to the education piece. Very commonly, people don't understand how much work goes into growing an apple. It is not. We don't take the winters off. I'm out there pruning all winter. It's a very diligent care of these trees, and to see people shaking them or throwing apples, it's like my children. I have 2 sons, but it's kind of like these trees are my children, and they can be pretty rough. So we definitely have a specific area that is for the pick your owners, and I want them to have fun, but they can definitely be aggressive.
Yeah, no, I've seen, I've been apple picking and other picking stuff, and it's just, yeah, it's tough to watch sometimes, that connection is not there. So I feel your pain when you see that. That must be hard. That's why I figured it was a specific area, and those obviously those trees have become probably more hardy over the years. It's not easy. So you have the pick your own. You do tours too, don't you? Now, do you, Erin, host the tours, or who hosts the tours?
I recently started doing orchard tours, but it's set up through, Simone would know better. I am like, Simone will check with me on when I can do a tour, and I'll do a few orchard tours, or one. I think we did 1 or 2 last year.
Yeah.
But it's usually through, I'm not sure who.
Well, so Scott Farm's a beautiful place. just to go back to your original question about agritourism and the visits, I just want to go back in terms of our farm stand so it's, I don't know what the definition of agritourism, but I'm just going to talk about the people who come to our farm. About 50% are locals who come to us because they love seeing the variety of apples, they love our cider, they love the location. Scott Farm's a beautiful place. So about 50%, come within the sort of the local, I don't know how many miles that is, but sort of right here, southern Vermont. And they'll come to us on weekends, or they'll come to us because they have a CSA share during the harvest. And the other 50% is from out of state. There's the pick your own. There's people stopping by, wanting to visit our cafe, also seeing just the amazing variety of apples that we have. And they want to sit down and have a sandwich at our cafe, or taste the hard cider, taste the sweet cider, and maybe do some pick your own, just to establish that. It's about 50-50. So that's people coming just for a visit, a quick visit, a quick unplanned visit. We do some tours, some orchard tours with Erin, very few, but we also do sort of bus groups. We have, road scholars, for example, who come, during the fall, and we'll do some tastings, primarily to introduce people to this place, the history, introduce people to apples in general, and then to the heirlooms that we go, and the history of heirlooms, and to have people spend a little bit of time at Scott Farm. So a lot of the groups that we welcome are those kinds of sort of planned groups who will primarily stay right here, look at the buildings and barns, and not necessarily go in the heirloom orchard with Erin.
And so you're doing weddings as well and events. So what type of experience, do people get to experience the essence of the farm when you're doing a wedding there?
That's a really good question. We should ask them. I think it's different for every couple. Going back to how our income is spread, we don't do that many weddings. The core of our business is agricultural. The core of our business is to grow and sell apples. Therefore, that's our priority, which means that we do very few, if no, weddings in the fall. Most of the weddings are during the spring and summer, when there's a lot going on in the orchard, but it's not harvest yet. So people don't get to really see a lot of the orchard activity and experience, the apples and the fruit that we grow. So people get to experience, I think, when they come as a couple and then their guests, the wedding, they get to experience the farm, the barns, the building, see the orchards in the distance. But I wouldn't say that it's a sort of immersive, integrated experience of the orchard.
Yeah, well, it's also, like you said, the timing of it too. So
it's the timing of it, and we don't do that many.
Yeah. So you've been there 4 years now? How many?
Yeah, it's a little over.
So what have you seen happen in the years you've been there? And what do you you're the manager, so you're the manager, you're looking at the whole operation. Where do you see the farm evolving to? Is there a shift in any focus? The demands of what customers are looking for, has that changed? Like, what are you seeing?
Well, where I'll start. So 4 years ago when I started, we were lucky to actually be eligible, or we were part of a program in Vermont called the Farm Viability Program. And it's the state of Vermont basically subsidizing business consultants for farms. So for about a year and a half, I got to work with a business consultant who helped me learn more about this business, but also give me sort of a big picture understanding of this business and where we could take it. As I mentioned earlier, but I'm going to say it again, Scott Farm's a for-profit business, but the parent organization, the owner of the business, is a nonprofit, a historic preservation nonprofit called the Landmark Trust USA. which means that we have, I answer to my supervisor, let's say, is the director of the nonprofit. And there's a board, there are committees with who we meet. There's a Scott Farm Advisory Committee. So we answer to, we work with community members, people who also care for this place very much. So the Farm Viability Program, I feel super grateful, super lucky to have been part of that, because it really helped me and help the board and Erin, just as an organization, really think through who we are, what we want to do, and make plans for the next 2, 5, 10 years. What came out of that plan and the business plan that came out of it was growing our retail, and that includes pick your own. As Erin mentioned earlier, it was it's been a conscious effort, and those things take time, right? It's like it takes, Erin will tell you,
3 years of planning.
3 years of planning,
Yeah.
then you plant the trees, and then it's going to be another 5, 6, 7, 8 years before you start really having trees that produce fruit.
Right.
So it's a long time. Those shifts are like tectonic plates. It's like it takes time to shift things. So increase our retail, increase our pick your own, and develop more value-added products. And that's where the hard cider came in. Frankly, trying to get the best bang for our buck. It's really, how can we get the most out of these very special apples that we grow? And so the development of the hard cider value-added product was a part of that.
Now, was that a big transition? Was there different equipment needed for that?
Yeah, and we also got some support from the state in buying sort of the basic, tanks and pumps and things like that, bottling equipment to get the business started.
Yeah,
we're still, in the scale of things, as a cidery, we're still very micro. Our ambition is really just to have hard cider to sell here at the farm, to be able to serve at our cafe, to maybe have a presence in some local stores. We're not in the wholesale market of trying to sell, thousands, hundreds of thousands of cans out there throughout the country. Very small business, but still helpful in using some of the heirlooms we have in the best way possible.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you got out of those meetings, or with that, or with those people who were helping you?
Yeah, well, shoring up our systems. Frankly, it's it's a lot of detail, but from like having better bookkeeping and being really, really disciplined when it comes to finances. Thinking about our internal organizational structure and, the employees we have, the H2A workers, when to bring them in. 2 years ago, Erin made the decision, or last year, made the decision to start bringing some of the Jamaican men earlier in the season. Sort of just overall, frankly, being very thoughtful and more efficient with the business, which I think has been a big improvement.
Excellent. And Erin, so the same question to you. And we talked a little bit about it, but you've been there a lot longer. So what, are there certain things that you're seeing evolving or changing in this world of farming, and specifically with apples, that that you're adjusting to?
Definitely. As understand, I knew the orchard really well for a long time, but when you manage the orchard, you learn it on a whole nother level, and a much more, use the word Simone and I love, granular level. And with efficiency and how the orchard is laid out, forward thinking, trying to, you need to replant an orchard gradually, always. So it's always producing. You can't just plant an orchard and let it go. It always has to be replanted, and to be replanting in a more efficient way, because when you have some, your group of workers going to pick a variety of apple, you want them to not be traveling to 6 different places to pick the one variety. That's a ton of travel time. You want them to go to one place to pick the one variety and cut out all that. Just there's a little tweaks in that way. But then, of course, with last year, you probably know we had a pretty significant freeze in May and lost 90% of our crop. And so with climate change and resilience and how we can adapt to that reality, planting a cider block. So we're going to plant in 2026. We've been planting it for a few years, but it became ever more present. Its importance to have a block that's for more resilient rootstocks, more resilient varieties, more seedling varieties that are native to Vermont that kind of are a little tougher when it comes to, hopefully, we don't have it so extreme, but an event like we had last year, ways we can protect ourselves were we to have another extreme event like that. We bought a frost fan this year that can help up to 10 acres. So trying to be efficient in that way that we can plant and plan to our adapting climate, and that, if we did have a freeze, we have the cider block that has some tougher varieties that we can still make cider with, regardless of what they look like, and they don't require as much labor. And so I think a good farmer is always thinking ahead, and you have to always think ahead and take learning experiences and how you can change with them. And my dad always says, there's that old phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he says, no, you can't be complacent. You have to keep trying to make it better. Don't be complacent. So I think that's a wise way to be in our world. Yeah.
Great advice. So I have 2 more questions for you. You mentioned all the organizations that have helped. Obviously, Vermont seems to be a very supportive state. The UVM extension, like what organizations have stood out to you that have, provided a lot of support for moving forward and getting you through tough times and stuff like that?
In the state of Vermont, well, I'll say just the state of Vermont, and so the Department of Agriculture, and there's the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which finances that farm viability program that I mentioned. There's also some funding for the Working Lands grant. The Working Lands Fund is what funded the beginnings of our small cidery. The Intervale Center manages that farm viability program, and they provide those business consultants, and they've been super helpful. So the Intervale in Burlington. I'll also mention NOFA. NOFA has been helpful. They have a farm recovery grant that last year, without much paperwork and red tape, they just sent us $5,000. It's important to mention them. We've had last year a lot of support from some of our state officials. I'd love to name Mike Maricki, who's our local state rep, and who went to bat for us and really tried to get us some money. Unfortunately, the governor of Vermont would not support that type of recovery funding for orchards. So we didn't get any money, but I just want to commend all our state representatives who really, really went to bat for us and really try to help us. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I would agree with you. What you said earlier, Vermont is a very supportive state for agriculture in general. And I think we can be grateful to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So from each of you, what's your favorite variety of apple? I'm sure you have. What was that, Erin?
Chestnut crab and black Oxford are, it's hard to say. I love very, very many of them, but chestnut crab I get very excited for. And black Oxford, I think, is one of the most gorgeous, moody, amazing apples that changes with time. So it's one apple when you first eat it, and it's a whole other apple when you let it sit for a while. So,
Erin, like if you just see the apples, like do you know right away which ones are? I'm sure you do. It's like That's great. I mean, there's so many varieties, and people just go into the grocery store and they think, that's it, you know. So, that's pretty cool. And your favorite variety?
So I'll answer a little bit differently, which is what for. I think when it comes to heirloom apples and the vast array of varieties, people often ask which variety is your favorite, and I often answer with that same question, which is, what for? With heirloom apples, there's a bit of a paradigm shift, which is, each heirloom apples is still here because it has a very specific purpose. There's some apples that are, that have been used for 300 years because they're the best applesauce apple. Others is because they're the best pie apple, or hard cider apple, or sweet cider apple, or because it's an early apple, or it keeps great, like Black Oxford. So my favorite apple to do what?
If you just wanted to eat an apple right off the tree.
Well, I'll go back. Erin said chestnut crab. It's definitely in the last 4 years one of the delights and biggest surprises. I have to say, a couple of years ago, we had a great crop of Newtown pippin. And in February, March, they had been stored for maybe 4 months, and they were just incredibly delicious. I think they improved with storage.
They're like a fine wine.
They really surprised me. So I would go with Newtown pippin in late February.
And Newtown pippin's history is pretty remarkable. It is an apple that has touched many royal lips. It is really neat history. If you ever want to look up an apple, that one's pretty cool. Yeah.
Excellent. So just to end, any advice that you'd want to give to someone who's looking to go into agriculture, or even to start a small farm? Obviously not something the size of what you're managing there, but just any advice you'd want to give them?
Plan really well. Be very thoughtful. Don't settle. If you want certain varieties, you can get some variety you want on the rootstock you want. If you have to wait more 4 years for it, wait for it. Be very thoughtful about how you plan it out. And observe, and take a lot of notes.
And any advice you'd want to give?
It requires a vast, and I'm sure you know that, Jen, already, but it requires a really vast array of skills to be able to start a farm business, run it successfully. So from that vintage point, I would say, figure out what you're really good at and put an emphasis on that. And some people, it's going to be marketing. And some people, it's going to be just growing. I feel like we're really lucky here because we have Erin and I complement each other really well. Erin's become a really good grower, excellent pruner, which has a very big impact on the health of the orchard. So that's what I would say. Figure out what you're really good at and build on those strengths.
Excellent. That's excellent advice. Well, thank you both. I have learned a tremendous amount from this conversation. I thought I knew a lot about this, and I didn't. So thank you for taking the time. And from an agritourism perspective, it's really, to me, just about the education, and the more people we can educate, whether it's through the podcast, whether it's through someone coming to your farm stand or coming to a wedding and just being open to their environment around them. I think it plays a significant role in educating and making people aware of what's going on in the world, and the importance of what you're doing and growing, and the soil and all the components that go into what you're doing at that farm. So thank you for what you do.
It sounds like you figured out what you're really good at. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. All right. So I will be in touch soon, and enjoy your day. And I definitely want to come visit one day and actually see the operation. It sounds like an amazing operation that you're managing and you're growing. And like you said, you do seem to complement each other extremely well. And the fact that you also have a background in growing, so you kind of know, the growing piece. But
I know very little about orcharding. It's its own
orcharding, but just the fact that just the growing piece and understanding what it takes, having that exposure to it, I guess, and then obviously your background when you were in Ireland at the farms and stuff like that. But I guess it all primed you for this opportunity. So congratulations. It's good stuff. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I will be in touch soon.
Come and visit. It's worth the trip.
Yeah.
I know it's worth the trip, so I definitely will. Thank you. All right. Take care, guys. Enjoy your afternoon. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agri-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agritourism Network, or GAN for short. The Global Network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.eurac.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.